Before you let him in, your M-Chuck.
He's already in.
I hate to break the fishing news after M-Chuck, but I'd like to speak about the ice hockey.
Congratulations. You're one of the 13 listeners of the Real Life Podcast.
We just traded a migraine in for like an orgasm.
Might want to mark that down.
Yep.
All of my projects are on schedule until they're not.
A member of the Nation Network of Podcasts.
About as funny as we're going to get today.
Welcome into episode 255 of the Real Life Podcast. I am Tyler Yaremchuk. Shout out to Oodle Noodle, who sponsors the pod. 14 locations in Edmonton. Number 15 is coming to Fort Saskatchewan. Available on all your favorite food delivery services. So if you're staying home tonight and you say, I am not starting my car, I'm not risking that, but I want delicious food brought to me, you can find them on Skip and Uber Eats. Also, though, if you go in-store or do curbside pickup, a proceed of your order goes towards a local charity. It is a fantastic cause. We got a busy show coming up. Frank Seravalli from TSN. Wait, no, not from TSN. From the DFO Rundown podcast. He's going to join us at 1:20. Also, our friend Scott Hastings from OddsShark. This is now the point where I usually introduce the usual cast of characters on the podcast. But the only one that showed up is Chalmers. Chalmers, how's it going?
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good. And we're just getting Wanye in now. Wanye, we're already recording, and there's Bag Milk.
Recording?
Yeah, we're already recording. I said 1 o'clock. It's 1:06. We're giving her.
Listen to me. Me and Bag Milk were talking about you off air.
Yep.
And that's what we were doing for 6 minutes. We're like, you know who's the worst? Yaremchuk.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you let him in so fast? I was excited to have just the Yaremchuk Chalmers show.
I didn't know you were here.
We had topics lined up and all of that stuff. Me and Chalmers were ready to roll with just the two of us. But Bag Milk's here as well. I said to Chalmers, I guarantee you Bag Milk and Wanye are on the phone together right now, yes. And that's why they're late for the podcast.
We weren't actually talking about you. We were talking about how, did you know Marilyn Manson got knocked out cold at a Denny's in Lethbridge?
What?
Yes.
Who's the source?
Rowdy, the news?
In 2015. So Wanye and I were talking about it, and my buddies and I, we all went to Marilyn Manson at the Shaw Conference Center, or whatever it's called these days, for my 30th birthday. A couple of days later, a news report came out that Marilyn Manson got punched in the face in a Denny's in Lethbridge at 2:30 in the morning. So I was like, how did this escape my news radar network of all news all the time? Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really.
Anyways, that's
stunning.
why we were late. We weren't really
Wanye,
talking. Yeah.
One quick thing, Wanye. You said that you didn't know that I was here, and that's because we usually do this thing over FaceTime, but today we're doing it over Zoom because of Frank Seravalli. But just so that you have everybody on the same page, you know, if you swipe all the way to the right, you'll get all four of us.
Hey.
Yeah.
There you go.
Now you see everyone, right?
Hey, how about having Frank Seravalli on our show, Chalmers?
I know, it's kind of fun.
What are you and your loser buddies doing in 2021, Chalmers? Talking on the phone to each other? Like, actually, we're doing a podcast. Really, what are you losers talking about? I don't know, like sports and stuff. Oh, really, you losers? Oh, by the way, Frank Seravalli's on our show today.
By the way, we're going to get a guy who's on Sports Center on TSN.
Yeah, Frank Seravalli, a guy who knows every phone number of general managers in the league off by heart, is on our show.
I can't wait to ask him about the creepy CRISPR documentary I watched yesterday, you know?
The what?
CRISPR, Tyler.
What is that?
Gene editing technology. It's the future. We're here.
That sounds alarming. But we do have Frank Seravalli coming up. I don't think we're going to talk about CRISPR, whatever the fuck that means. But basically, it's going to be like a little bit of an introduction to Frank Seravalli. Ask him how he got into the business, how he got to TSN at such a young age as well. Get an introduction to Frank. Also ask him a couple of hockey questions as well. Chalmers has one that he wants to bring up. On top of that, like I said earlier, we also have Scott Hastings coming up. And I had a listener who DM'd me, and I wish I had my phone on me. I can give him credit. But he said he wants us to ask Scott about proper bankroll management. And after I got my ass handed to me during the Super Bowl and Battle of Alberta, I'm looking forward to Scott's answer on how I can better manage my bankroll. Oilers tonight.
Being a DGen.
Yeah, that is probably the best advice you could give me at this point.
Tyler, just follow along with me because I've been hitting goal props like fucking crazy.
You got to start sharing. Sharing is caring.
I did, man. Risky business before the game.
Oh, yeah, you do.
I'll have one today. I haven't looked yet today, Bulls.
We'll get into that with Scott. Oilers coming up tonight against the Habs. No sense really talking about it because by the time most people listen to this podcast, the game's over. So, I mean, either A, yay, the Oilers win. Either B, damn it, they let 2 points slip away against a Habs team that's playing on second of back-to-backs. But then the Oilers are off for the entire weekend. And we are so spoiled with these Oilers games every second night kind of thing throughout the regular season right now. Because when they go 3 days without a game, I'm lost. I don't know what to do with myself.
I find it
the nights are very long.
They are long, but I find it interesting that it's Hockey Day in Canada this weekend, and the Oilers are not playing with two of the biggest names in the NHL, with Connor and Leon. You know what I mean?
It's a joke.
Every day is Hockey Day in Canada, boys.
But they're pumping it up as this whole, celebration of the sport. It's all that stuff. And you like Chalmers, I know you're going to have a take on this because we talk about marketing the league and needing all that stuff. You're not going to have your best player playing on Hockey Day in Canada. Like, it makes no sense. Why would you not, instead of sending the Oilers back to Edmonton after their game tonight against Montreal, why are they not going to Toronto? McDavid in Toronto, Hockey Day in Canada. That's the way to do it. I do not understand why the Oilers are getting that day off.
Yeah, so I was alerted on Twitter by Steven Fiddler, one of our listeners that I think we did a listener profile on him recently, and he alerted me to it. And when I had to double check, I just could not believe that they were going to have Hockey Day in Canada without Draisaitl and McDavid playing. And when I looked, I'd like to say that I was shocked to find out he was correct. But I thought about the way that the NHL runs its business and the fact that I don't know anything about any NHL hockey players and that their stories aren't told. And it just shows me that they just don't have a big picture view. It is just so ridiculous.
Chalmers, I dare you to tell Frank Seravalli this today. I dare you. I dare you to tell him. And I want to new Bob McKenzie. Tell him right to his face and see what he says.
Oh, is that what he is? He's the new Bob McKenzie?
Well, do you know his deal? He's the new guy. He is the insider of insiders. He is the new Bob McKenzie. Man.
Well, I think he's a part of their quartet or whatever, like him, Dreger, LeBrun.
The rest of them are, they're all old boys. This is the guy.
I want to know what he thinks about Tom Brady being in the fucking bag yesterday. I loved it.
Are we just going to pepper him with different topics?
Yes. Say to him, like, hey, Frank Seravalli, top of the fucking media food chain. The sizzling 30 under 30 for Earth. Why is it that we don't know anything about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins 7 years into his career? Like, what the fuck is going on?
I should ask him how those negotiations are going as well.
Yeah, I think Chalmers wanted to bring that up as well because one of Frank's bold predictions this year was that Nugent-Hopkins is going to be on the free agent list whenever that drops on TSN. I think.
How dare he?
Yeah, in an article at the beginning of the season, Frank Seravalli has his 31 bold predictions for the NHL season. And number 9, right there, to my surprise, Nugent-Hopkins will be TSN's number 1 free agent going into free agency. And
but that doesn't mean he'll get to free agency, though.
No, that doesn't. But if he's going to be the number 1 name at the top of the list, that means that they think there's a chance.
If Frank Seravalli is going to join our band at the Nation Network and be the hit singer on his own channel, he has to realize you keep your bad Oilers news to yourself, Frank Seravalli.
Yeah.
You keep that shit off the open. We don't need no more drama, Frank Seravalli, up here. You keep that shit to yourself.
Frank, if Nuge hits free agency and you have anything to do with it, the podcast is done. Deal's off.
Canceled.
Legit your fault. I do, though, seriously, like, the fact that I know nothing about what I consider to be the third best Oiler, and he's played here for 7 years, and it's not for a lack of trying.
I was waiting for somebody to tell me I was wrong. No one said anything. I thought Bagmug was going to be like, you fucking idiot.
Thought you were.
I've been here for 7 years.
I'm actually working on the GDB while we're talking here, so I wasn't really paying attention.
He's 2010 draft.
Nope. Yeah, he was 2011.
There we go, your M-check. Taylor Hall is 2010.
You guys got to admit, it's ridiculous.
And
it is ridiculous.
Thanks for alerting me to that, Steve. I don't normally tweet, but I had to just send something back and say, not surprised, man. These guys don't know how to run their business.
Yeah, I think the way to look at that is just a general marketing thing with Frank, right? Like, could the league do a better job of that? I think expansion maybe helps. Like, that gets you in the news, gets you into more markets. Seattle's a huge TV market. So, like, Seattle coming into the league is big, too. Having the team in Vegas, I think, has been really good for the growth of the game in the States. So, I think there are some good strides being taken, but I think I think it definitely is fair to critique. We've done it before plenty of times on this podcast.
Tyler and Chalmers, I got a question for you about Seattle. Just like this, you're not going to have an answer, but I want to ask. Do you think that team is going to do as well as some people think, just behind the Seahawks and the Mariners as the bigger sports in town?
Oh, like in general as a poll? I think so, because like when NFL season is going, like when NFL season's kind of at its peak, that's sort of middle of the regular season for hockey. But as you go down the stretch for hockey, like baseball's quiet, football's in the off season. So I think there's plenty of room for them to come in there and have like a really diehard fan base. Also, Seattle's a huge sports town. Like Seahawks fans, the 12s, they're insane. So I think hockey will be fine.
If you are a Vancouver Canucks fan, do you abandon that shitty franchise?
Yes.
And make your way to the Seattle Kraken?
Yes.
Oh, what the hell?
What the hell? What?
The NHL just released a statement on the Oilers game tonight.
Breaking news. Beep, beep,
as the result of an Oilers player entering the league's COVID protocol earlier today, the league announced a change to the start time against the Habs. So it's going to start at 6:00 Mountain, and as to allow for the completion and analysis of Oilers test results in advance of the game. I know no one can say this, but do you think this has anything to do with Jesse Puljujärvi not being at morning skate?
Oh no,
this isn't good.
What? So they're going to push it back 1 hour so that they can analyze the testing. Does that mean that maybe they've been starting games without getting actually all the test results from all the players?
That happened in Vegas the other night. Thomas Nosek left after the second period. I think it was Nosek because he had a positive test. And in the second period, they were like, get the fuck out of here.
What?
Oh, what is an hour going to do?
Maybe I thought they're all vaccinated by now. What the fuck is going on? Why aren't we vaccinating everybody? They're superior people to the rest of us insects. Give everyone a vaccination so this shit doesn't happen anymore.
Well, it's not canceled, so I guess that's good. We still have a game to watch tonight, but
maybe we'll see.
Well, yeah, who fucking knows?
Can I say something about the Seattle question that Begmouth asked?
Yeah.
Because yes, I agree that they're going to have a window to gain fans, but I also believe that they need to do it quickly and they need to push their stories hard. They need to get their marketing department on overdrive, because when Seattle gets its basketball team back, they will be playing at the exact same time, having their finals at the exact same time. And that will completely decimate any type of fan interest if they have not created it already.
Well, that was a big thing for Vegas too, was they need to, establish a fan base. And that's a big reason, I think, why the NHL went as quickly to get into Vegas as they could. Get the fan base, get them loving the Golden Knights before the NFL shows up. I think that was a big reason.
Get their basketball team back. What do you mean?
Well, they've had a big push recently, ever since the Supersonics has left.
Oh my God. I didn't know that the Supersonics left. When did the Supersonics leave?
Like 20 years ago.
A long time ago.
No, it wasn't 20. It was like, 15 years ago? Like the start of KD's career.
No.
There's talk.
I would have bet
2008.
$100.
There's talk every year that they're coming. There's talk every year that they're coming back. And I think it's really serious this time that they're going to be coming back to a franchise. I don't even know if it's going to be through expansion or through moving. There is some NBA franchises that are really struggling, and so they might move. But I think it's kind of inevitable at this point. Anytime now.
Yeah, I think it'll be expansion. I think the NBA is looking at the NHL now being at 32, and on top of that, they're looking at obviously football's been at 32 for a while, but I think baseball is going to eventually make a push here. I say within the next 5 years, NBA and MLB are at 32 as well, and all four leagues will be at 32.
If you had told me, or Chuck, hey, Wanye, how do you think the Seattle Supersonics are doing this year versus last year after they lost all those players in free agency and had framed up a fictitious situation? I'd have been like, I would have had no fucking idea the Supersonics left. How could they leave? Seattle's one of the richest markets in the USA. What happened?
Yeah, it was, I think it was pretty stunning, kind of when they left to go to Oklahoma City.
What?
Just odd. Yeah, that's where they moved. They became the OKC Thunder.
Did they give them a free OKC Thunder?
Yeah, not the Oklahoma City Barons. That would be the Oilers AHL.
No. Geez, good God! I can tell you enough about the Barons to fill a book. I just didn't realize the Oklahoma City Thunder. I thought they were an expansion team. My topics are just flying at me for today's podcast, but I'm looking at a picture right now of a suite at the Red Deer Arena
that has been turned into a little dorm room. And apparently this via World Hockey Report, the Red Deer Rebels will be living at the rink for the upcoming season.
What?
Imagine.
I thought they're going to let a.
Go look at the picture I just retweeted.
They should rent out the boxes as condos to fans.
What are they going to sleep in? Like on cots and shit?
Go look at the picture I just retweeted. Also, Frank Seravalli's here. Frank's ready, so I'm going to let Frank into the chat now. All right, episode 255 of the Real Life Podcast, special guest, and most people would intro him as Frank Seravalli from TSN, but I will intro him as Frank Seravalli from the DFO Rundown podcast. Frank, thanks for joining Real Life today.
What's up? It's good to be here.
All right, let's get right into the podcast life for you, because you've never done a podcast of your own or anything like that. We're now one episode deep on DFO Rundown. How much are you enjoying, and how much do you think you'll enjoy going forward, having a platform where you can kind of take your filter off a little bit?
Yeah, that's fun. I was actually thinking about over the weekend after we were kind of nailing down episode 1, we're still kind of getting our feet wet. And then I was like, how much should I swear on here? It's like, what is appropriate? What's good? Should it have emphasis? And I couldn't help but think our first guest, Paul Maurice, he is a legendary swearer. Like if you spend any time around him, around the rink, you could get 20 F-bombs in a string of 30 words. And he's dropped them in press conferences. He did it last week with regards to Blake Wheeler and his defense, and he didn't swear a single time on the DFO Rundown podcast. And I was thinking that it's smart, and not just not swearing, because like we could all come up with better words to use and more descriptive words, but the fact that he does it for a reason with emphasis. It's just one of those little nuances of podcasting that obviously I don't have the option to do that on air or on radio. And so it's, just one of those little things that I'm thinking about, a little adventure to go on and trying to see how we do it.
It's sort of like a defenseman jumping up in the rush, where if you just do it every single time, eventually everyone will get sick of it and think it's dumb and that you should stop doing it. But if you pick your spots, people will enjoy it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. And I've got some fun stories that we can roll out along the way. Some are more graphic than others, and that'll be fun.
I want to go back through your career in media a little bit, because for me, it's fascinating. I mean, you're under 35, you're on TSN.
What we talked about on the last podcast, where we talked about,
hey, who's playing shit into their mic? Stop that. We're recording a podcast right now. Anyways, hi, Frank, for you, a young guy now, but let's go back to the beginning. When did you think you wanted to start working in media? Like when did this become something you thought you wanted to do?
Probably in high school.
Yeah.
I realized I wasn't a good enough hockey player to really go far. And I figured the next best job, aside from being a hockey player, would be to be in some sort of hockey media role. And so when I was in high school, there's down here in Philly, there's a local magazine that would be published at the rinks, and it was called Breakaway Magazine. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was printed every month, and it was just available for free, kind of like as you walk into the lobby of the rink. And I reached out to them. I let them know I was interested in doing it, told them I was in high school, and they gave me an opportunity to write a few different things, go to the rink and talk to people. And at some point, maybe in my senior year of high school or my freshman year of college, they came to me and they said, hey, look, as part of like the local media here, we have a press pass to the Flyers. And, the guy who has it, he can't make it. His wife's having a baby and he needs to step back. This is just a volunteer position. They're like, we can't pay you $1, but if you're interested, we'll give you our credential to the Flyers games, and you can go and hang out in the press box and meet people and watch the Flyers. And I was like, that sounds amazing. The only requirement was that you showed up to every game, every home game, so that they could keep the seat. Essentially, I was like the guy whose job was to keep the seat warm for the next person. And I went there and just, I'm a people person. I like talking to people, meeting people, hanging out with people, drinking beers. Just started meeting the people that cover the team on a regular basis. It was kind of a small group then. Internet media hadn't really launched. It was basically newspapers and, TV and radio. And so met them, turned into a few freelance gigs, to make a long story long. And eventually I started interning at the Philadelphia Daily News, and I spent a year there before I was actually ready to leave and go to grad school. There were no jobs at all in hockey media and no jobs at all in the Philly sports media. And so I was ready to go to college or to grad school to get my master's at Columbia in journalism. And I moved to New York, and I was there 3 weeks, and the paper called me and they said, hey, the guy that was covering the Flyers here, he decided to retire 2 weeks before training camp. Do you have any interest in coming back to interview for the position? I graduated school early, and I got that job when I was 21, and then it's kind of just been off to the races since.
How wild was it, Frank, that you grew up loving hockey, and then all of a sudden you're 21 years old and you're covering the Flyers?
It was pretty insane. I think when I actually first started covering the team, I hadn't turned 21 yet. I couldn't even drink a beer. So I remember going to the 2008 playoffs, and the Flyers went to the conference final that year against Pittsburgh. It was a short series, but we had a few long days in Pittsburgh. And so I would hang out with the other media members, and they'd have to sneak me into the bar just to hang out. So as someone, one of my mentors in the industry told me, he's like, if you want to get ahead in this industry, you need to know how to drink a beer. And I was like, well, pretty sure I got that covered. And so they snuck me in, and like all of a sudden, like I said, next thing I know, less than a year later, I'm, going to every Flyers game, traveling on the road, and just an incredible opportunity.
Did it? Oh yeah, go ahead, Chalmers.
Was it normal back in the day for some of those old boys to maybe have a pot while they were covering the game? And did you see that stuff in the press box?
Never during a game. For whatever reason, what sticks out to me with regard to that is Texas. I covered an Eagles game there against the Cowboys when I was working for the paper during one of the lockouts, and they have like beer taps right in the press room, but they weren't like flowing before the game, but after the game, you could just like walk up with a glass and pour yourself a beer right out of that.
Heaven.
But also the Stars, when I first started, the Dallas Stars after the game was like my first game covering in Texas. When I was covering the Flyers, they would bring a 6-pack to your seat in the press box, and you could just basically like sip as you wrote. And I thought that was the best thing ever.
That's unreal.
That's
I remember
great.
I covered.
Your juices flowing.
I like obviously here in Edmonton, you'd never get that in the press box. But I remember I covered a curling tournament, the World Curling Championships or some shit when he was here when I was in Nate. And when you went to the media room there was a beer fridge. Covering curling's a ton of fun.
The best writers are drunk. So I mean, that's just the way it works.
I was going to ask you if you ever get like young kids in air quotes, like an 18, 19-year-old who reaches out to you and asks for career advice. Is your career advice to just learn how to drink beer?
I don't think that's exactly what my career advice would be. And I do get asked that a lot. My first answer to that is be engaging. Like if you are someone that wants to break into this field, obviously you need to meet people and they can help open doors for you. But I get so many emails that are like the run of the mill. Can you help me? Like doesn't explain their situation. Will you talk to me? Or, what it's like, be engaging, like set yourself apart from the rest. Tell me why I should, engage with you and try and help you in your career. And I'm more than happy to do so because so many people did for me, but just show like a little initiative. And the other thing I would suggest, not that you asked this question, but the other thing I would suggest is read a lot. I spend so much of my day reading. A lot of it's spent on the phone, but I'm reading almost everything that's out there. I go through the clips every morning where I'm getting around the league to make sure I don't miss anything if I wasn't able to watch a game.
Yeah, I think, that's great advice as well. I think a lot of times people just think like, oh, I was a hockey fan growing up. I should be able to talk about hockey for a living and all that. And like, there's a lot more than just like talking about your favorite team that goes into it. So we got to the point in your career where you were working for the paper, covering the Flyers. When did TSN start coming into the picture?
So I covered the Flyers for 6 seasons, I believe, and had my son was born in 2014. I joined TSN in 2015, and believe it or not, I didn't know a ton of people at TSN. The reason I found out about the job, I remember I was in Toronto covering a Maple Leafs game, just a regular Flyers road trip. And someone had mentioned to me, hey, did you see TSN posted this job on like an online job board? And I was like, that's kind of interesting. The title was TSN hockey blogger. And I wasn't sure like what it entailed, what they wanted to do. And I actually missed the deadline to apply. And so I had just reached out to a couple people that I knew. One of them being Bob McKenzie. I didn't have like a deep relationship with him. He would just reach out to me every now and again and say, hey, do you have the Flyers lines today? Or what's going on in Philly today? Or like he'd send me some kind of fun note, like, keep rattling those fuckers' cages down there. Like, you're doing work, whatever. And so I just, phoned him up one day and I was like, hey, do you know anything about this job? And he's like, yeah, I know all the people involved. Like I can help recommend you. And that's kind of what happened. And I think it was one of those situations where they were able to get me in the application process, even though I was late, and went through like the longest job search of my life in the sense that like it took 4 months from maybe even longer, almost 5 months from sending a note saying I was interested to going through the number of interviews, a trip to Toronto. I actually didn't get the job at first. They offered it to someone else and that person then declined and they came back to me. And it was just a wild turn of events where I started basically the week of the Stanley Cup final in 2015.
I got a question for you about source development. Guys like you, when you're young and, you have to develop these sources and you have to make them trust you. And I imagine you've got quite a few. And I've always really been interested in how journalists and writers go about developing sources.
I would say it just comes from being around every day. When you cover one team, like I did at the start, you're there every day. You're at every practice, every game. You're in the press box. You're asking questions. You're in every scrum. You're trying to call people on the phone. The way you handle yourself, your comportment, the way you treat people, if you're respectful. Are you friendly? Can you have a laugh? Are you always bugging a guy about this or that? Can you talk about, something else going on, whether it's, football, go to a guy and talk about the Super Bowl. Like you don't have to talk hockey every day, every minute of every day. And so I think guys appreciate that sort of conversation that you can have around the room and just get to know people on a human basis. Ask them about their kids.
Yeah, perfect. Because I've always thought it was quite a fine line to walk. And like, you see what happened with Jacob Voracek and like just how he treated that writer, and that must basically kill that writer to the rest of the team when the leader is, not trusting him and calling him out. Like you got to really like be careful, or it's like career suicide for a guy like that if you get on the wrong side of somebody. Is that tough to do?
Look, you have disagreements all the time. I can't tell you how many times I had a run-in with a coach or with a player or a GM when I covered the Flyers. They'd call you out, and that was the other part of it, is like just being there every day. They know that you're going to show up the day after that and the day after that. And they begin to respect that. And like, as long as you're respectful and can defend yourself in terms of what you wrote or said, that I think they just like to get it off their chest and then everyone moves on. So like, I think the unfortunate part of the like 2021 Zoom environment is that you've lost that ability to interact with people. And I think that stuff, maybe not on that exact scale, happens all the time where there's disagreements and, someone didn't like something that was said or written, but people hash it out. Like you just go into the hallway and talk it out and move and apologize if you felt like you needed to and move on. And sometimes like those disagreements that I had, they ended up becoming really strong people or sources, if you will, that I ended up talking to because they can relate to you and they see that you're just someone that shows up every day trying to do the job.
Well, speaking of people who've written something that you disagree with, I noticed on your 30 bold predictions that you put out at the beginning of the season, number 9, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has become the number 1 free agent on the TSN board.
How dare you?
How dare you? So
This is a very pro Nugent-Hopkins podcast.
Yeah, Frank, as president and CEO of the Ryan Nugent-Hopkins fan club here in Edmonton, what's going on between the player and this team right now?
Well, I was going to say, does it really seem that bold at this point, given the way the season has unfolded to start?
No, and the thing that I'm worried about is like the number one that you had was like Montreal Canadiens will be atop the North Division. They're doing pretty good at the beginning. That looked crazy. Now they look like the best team in the North. And then, you have just other things that all hit. And so it makes me even more worried the more that I see that you're right with some of these.
Look, I think these two sides, the Nugent-Hopkins camp and the Oilers, went around and around in circles this summer, or I guess the fall and the off season, and they understand really clearly where they stand. And I think part of this, everyone's curious to see how this unfolds, because I think I mentioned today on the Lowdown with Lowtide just about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is sort of typically a slow starter to his seasons. And you look back to last year, I think the stat that I quoted was 7 even strength points in his first 35 games of the year. And it wasn't until he went to play with Yamamoto and Draisaitl that he really exploded and ended up at 61. And I think this year to start, everyone was saying, well, why don't you just go back to that? Because it worked. But the other part of it was they needed someone to play with McDavid. And so he's now got this opportunity on a line where he should be able to really do some damage. And the point production, it hasn't been terrible, but at even strength, it hasn't exactly been there. And so I think everyone's wondering what exactly is going on. Is the contract weighing on him? Is the situation, just not unfolding chemistry-wise right? And then I think if you're the Oilers, you're saying, well, if we have $6.5 to $7 million to spend, and do we want to do it on Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, given the production value that we're getting out of him? They love him. The team loves him. He loves being there. Or could we potentially spend that money in a better way? And so I think that's sort of the internal push and pull that's going on. And the best part, I think, for everyone here is that there's a lot of runway to really come to a conclusion on that.
Certainly something to keep an eye on. And I know it, like you said, Frank, the Oilers seem to love him. He seems to love it here. And the fan base is, just fucking nuts about the guy. He's without a doubt, probably like outside of McDavid and Draisaitl, he's probably the fan favorite in this city.
But he's probably going to have to readjust his expectations in terms of money.
Like, do you think $7 million is a sticking point in this?
I do. I don't think the Oilers are willing to go to a number that starts with a 7. At least that's my understanding so far. And that was all in the pandemic world. So the cap and everything had been the same.
Just because now I'm thinking about this, if the Oilers aren't willing to go to 7, and they also have the ability to potentially offer him, the year more than other organizations are in free agency, like in a pandemic world, especially like we just saw Mike Hoffman get squeezed, Taylor Hall had to take a 1-year deal. If the Oilers can't give him 7 or aren't willing to give him 7, is there an organization out there that's going to be in a position to give him that much money in free agency?
Well, that's the risk, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the gamble, is trying to figure out whether one is or isn't. And the Bruins went through this with Torrey Krug, if you remember.
Yeah.
Their offer was something like 6 times 6.5, if I'm not mistaken. And it took him going, he got a real stroke of luck with Pietrangelo leaving St. Louis, opening up a team that had the cap space and was willing to spend. But, what if it wasn't for St. Louis, then they would have been in a position where they needed to, he would have been in trouble. So it's a risk that you take when you go to the market, and they're going to have to weigh all those things out. But I think the one thing to kind of look forward to, if you're Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and maybe not a lot of these other guys, is this might be the best free agent class we've had in 10 years, maybe longer. The quality of names that are on the market or could be is going to be fascinating, and might be another reason why the Oilers want to lock him up.
If you were to ballpark it, Frank, just for my personal well-being, where would you say we're at? Are we 50-50 or something like that?
I think we're 50-50.
Okay.
I don't think the horse is out of the barn. But I think they're in a position where he needs to produce to justify what he's looking for, I think. And if not, they might be able to find someone that can do a little bit better in that exact role that he's being used in.
A couple more for you, Frank, because I know we're running out of time here. We were at the point in your career, as we keep getting sidetracked, because that's what we do on this podcast, where you get the gig at TSN. Do you remember like your first sort of on-camera hit for TSN? Like, were you nervous at all for that first hit?
Oh my God, I was shitting my pants. I had done a lot of TV before that in the Philly market, and I was, my first two on-air experiences were actually like incredibly difficult. The first one was
There's the phone.
In Vegas. Did my phone just ring again?
Oh yeah.
So that's another
probably
phone.
Ryan Nugent-Hopkins' agent being like, Seravalli, get off that topic.
Pretty much. My first one was in Vegas at the NHL Awards with Brent Wallace, and I was the new guy, the rookie, and he was kind of just like, he was fun, but it was like, you're holding the mic wrong. You're doing this wrong. You're not smiling. Stand closer together. Like all these little tips to the trade that I just never knew about. And like that totally fucked me up for like 6 months. And I was like really struggling. And then the second one, my second on-air appearance, they sent me to South Bend, Indiana for Blackhawks training camp after the allegations surfaced with Patrick Kane for sexual assault. And so I was with Sarah Orlesky, who I had never worked for before and has become one of my closest friends at TSN, just a fantastic human being. And it was such a difficult subject, and I was already so uncomfortable on air, just trying to feel my way through the process that, man, like I'm glad no one's ever like played that clip again, because it's just one of those situations where you want to make sure every single word that you say is the right one to handle and report on it appropriately. And that was a difficult one to get thrown into, but I think I'm better off for it now.
Last area. Oh, go ahead, Beckmilk.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about, Frank, was kind of lending to what you were talking about earlier, how you're developing sources and relationships with people. Seeing as you're the insider on TSN, how do you pick and choose between what you would say on something like Trade Center or insider trading, and what do you keep to yourself? How do you weigh those decisions when you're putting something out in a broadcast?
It's a really good question, and it's one that I kind of ask myself daily. I've personally just found that the best reporters that cover the NHL, you only know like what only makes it to public air is 10% of what they actually know. And then you find that there's other people out there that are running around trying to get as much information out there as they can. And what they're publicly putting out there is 90 or 95% of what they know. And so, if you can keep some in your arsenal and continue to, use that information to push forward and find out more information, I think that's so valuable. And the other part is too, in how you frame it. You could be on great terms with a person who's helping you with information, whether it's background or insight, or even, helping you, with something that you're trying to break. But if you don't phrase it in the appropriate way and you piss them off, like that comes back to bite you too. So look, there's no question, and it's unfortunate, but I think it's probably the way it has to be, is that there's an adversarial relationship that exists between the media and the teams that we cover, because they don't want the information out there, or else they would just do it on their own. And so we're kind of digging behind the scenes to try and get that information out there. And that's the push and pull that exists, but it's also like kind of what makes it so fun. Like you wake up every day and you're like, what can I figure out? Well, what's out there that I can get my hands on?
Let me have a quick little rant. I haven't said one word. I've been so good. I've been sitting here. I've been biting my tongue the whole damn time.
Okay.
Can you come back again, Frank, please? We have so many questions, please.
Sure.
Yeah. Chalmers,
you guys own my podcast rights, like literally.
Sir, we are not. We are your distributor rather. You are the talent and you own your own shit. Chalmers, are you watching what's happening here? This is very exciting. I was in a meeting with these American. This is a momentous podcast. I'm very happy. This is very exciting. I was in a meeting with some American dudes, right? And the Nation Network's on the verge of getting some new business partners and really trying to like go for it and make way more content and, get way bigger. And it's predominantly in the States. And I was in a meeting with these potential partners and we're talking about like getting a new master class of content creators. And they went around the room and they're like, who's the number one person? And every single person said Frank Seravalli. And I said Jason Gregor because he's my boy. And now he's on the podcast.
Now we're on
Frank
You
Seravalli.
don't want to do. You don't want to launch this thing with guys in their trucks?
Commerce.
like a really nice truck.
We're talking to Frank Seravalli. We're doing them both of the same. That's what she said. Anyways, listen. Frank Seravalli, you are the most legitimate media guy. I'm so fucking stoked about this. You're like a throwback to like Red Fisher and shit. And the game is so much better. The game is so much better off with you talking about it, right? Like I always wonder with Edmonton, with the Oilers in the 80s, like I was too young for it all, but we had really good reporters. We had really good media here at the time. And like our announcer was super good. I'm like, I wonder how much better the Oilers are because the media is so good at telling the stories and announcing the best team ever, right? And I think like for the long-term viability of the game, sports journalism is a bitch. There's basically no jobs, right? It's not like when we were a generation before
look at
us,
this last
right?
week, like
Fuck, man. It's ridiculous, right? And, you know, Yaremchuk's a really good example. Like he's the Doogie Howser of the Edmonton sports scene, and you're the super meta Doogie Howser of hockey, right? And the fact that you're both in the same podcast, if I was just listening to this, I'd be like, damn. The fact that I'm on it, I'm like, what?
Is that the rant?
Exciting. Yeah, man.
That's the
and
whole
my
rant.
final question is, can you start a rumor for us, Frank, that Edmonton is suddenly the number one destination of choice for free agents?
Every
Yes.
free
And
agent.
remark aloud, wow, Edmonton is so popular now. Everybody wants to play there because then players will get tricked. That's my question.
I could help you maybe if you guys like relocated 2,000 miles south.
No.
No.
Only minus 35 here right now.
Yeah.
I
Frank,
think that might have a small something to do with it.
yeah, it was like minus 45 Celsius with wind chill tonight, overnight. So
Whatever, man. Philadelphia is cold as balls. I was there once.
it's
It was
not
as cold
fucking
as-
minus 40.
No,
Wow,
like
but it's a wet cold, though. It's a different cold.
It's a dry.
Different cold. I was cold as shit
okay.
the one day I was there. Anyways, Frank, good luck to you, sir. Good luck to your continued ascent to the top of everything. Good luck to your podcast. Anything we can do to help? You have friends in Edmonton, buddy.
Hey, that's actually the best part. I got to tell you guys, when I really first started at TSN, the city that I connected the most with right off the hop was Edmonton. And I'd say that not because I'm on with you guys. I just became close with a few people in the city. And it always felt to me like the Philly of the North in terms of the passion of the fans and how everyone digs in and buys in on the team. And that doesn't exist, you know, across Canada and especially across the rest of the league. So I just connected like on a, you know, sort of a mental vibe or wavelength with Edmonton in a different way. And I'm, you know, it's kind of fitting in a way that I was able to connect with you guys and get this podcast rolling.
Dope.
So what he says is, so we talked about on this podcast a bunch of times. And since you are somebody who is very valuable to the NHL right now, I wonder if you have an opinion on this. We talked about the fact that the NHL as a whole has a marketing problem, that we don't know the stories. We're going to make this quick, but in Canada, Hockey Day in Canada, neither Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl are going to be playing that day. I don't know anything about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and he's played here for 11 years. Why and how can they start to tell the story better? And why aren't they doing it of the players?
I can't answer that. I don't think it's a media issue. I think it's really an access issue. I think it's, and I think some of that's changing a little bit because I think the NHL is realizing as a whole that they need the media in a partnership to help tell these stories, and that naturally helps sell the game. And to this point, that's been missed, and a lot of people have lost out on that. So, you know, I'm hoping that it's changing, but, you know, at the same time, having been around for, you know, 10, 11, 12 years now, I'm not really holding my breath because I think the access has gotten a little worse instead of a little better. And so there's a lot of ways to go. And I don't think COVID's helping either. The fact that we can't press the flesh, spend time talking to people, everything's on these cold Zoom calls. And if not, you're cold calling someone. So it's not exactly the best environment.
And you obviously have a unique perspective on that because of your role with the PWHA as well. Like, I should wrap this up, but this is my last one, I promise. Are you worried that with this Zoom stuff and the access being taken away for COVID, are you a little nervous it might not get back to like what it was before?
I think everyone's nervous about that. What point do we need to get to in this pandemic that everyone will feel that it's safe enough for us to go back in the dressing room and be on the same level as the players? And it almost feels now like a different world than it did a year ago. And, we got written guarantees essentially from the NHL and the NHL Players Association that I made sure to send to our membership to let them know that the NHL has no plans and no, sense that they want to move in any direction off of what these current media regulations are. And so I'd like to take them at their word and believe that. I just don't know how far off in the distance or future it is. Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years before we can finally get back to that? And what's going to pop up between now and then? It's so many unknowns, and it does make me nervous for the industry and how we do our jobs. But I think everyone has to make sacrifices. And I think at this point, given what's gone on in this industry, I know I speak for myself in saying that I'm really thankful to even have a job at this point covering hockey.
Yeah, I have so many questions. Like, how the hell are you the president of the Hockey Writers Association, despite being the youngest person at the meeting? Anyways, you have to come back. I have so many.
Yes. Also, the most hungover person at the meetings.
Are they just like? Does everyone just look at you and they're like, "Oh, he reminds me of me when I was younger"? And you're like, "I'm in charge, by the way, everybody. I am in charge."
32, and he's got gray hair and he's fat. He must be 50, and I think that's what everyone has thought.
Frank, we could go on for hours with you, man. We'll have to do this again in a few weeks. Thanks for your time.
Anytime, guys. My pleasure.
Take care.
Frank Seravalli from the DFO Rundown podcast on the Real Life podcast. Two Nation Network podcasts
fucking
coming
getting
together.
Somewhere, buddy. He said he'll come back whenever we want. We can ask him what is happening. It's like getting to talk to the TV rather than watching him on TV.
That made our legitimacy bump go up a bit, did it not? Like, Frank Seravalli, he's an active, big-time sports reporter. Like, that was very cool.
My favorite part about chatting with him is you can tell, like, just the tone in his voice changes when he goes from, like, fun Frank talking about, like, himself and drinking beers with the boys in the press box, and then he gives an answer on Ryan Nugent-Hopkins' contract, and it's like you're listening to an episode of That's Hockey. He's like, listen, here's what's happening between the two sides. It's great. I love it. Love it.
You're Chuck. You got to fucking listen to that guy.
No.
You too could be like Frank Seravalli, except that you already live in 2021 when you're young. And the roadblocks to blowing up online, there are none. Whereas when Frank was your age, you couldn't even do it. Right?
Frank was my age like a decade ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. Like, it'd be easier for you to be the next new Bob McKenzie that's on TSN, but you're like 10 times bigger online. Because you've had way more experience doing shit online, right?
Wanye, people love when you disclose things about business, and I don't know how much you want to disclose about this, but like it's cool to get a guy like Frank Seravalli and to kind of be in business with him.
Yes, we're kind of being business. I signed a contract with him. It's fucking off the chains. It's crazy.
I know. Well, I think people would be really interested in the whenever you're ready to tell them, like the ins and outs of just kind of how the growth of a podcast goes, and how the growth of that company.
We're on the verge of like doing some pandemic deals here that are like Hail Marys that you throw that bounce off the kicking thing in the end zone and it falls in the guy's hands, like very low percentage receivers. We're making them. And I think at the end of that, when Jay's on and shit, we'll probably like talk to the people that we're doing the deals with on the show and be like, what are we doing as a business? Why are we doing business together? Why is Frank Seravalli here all of a sudden? How is this part of a larger plan? Because I think that like, it's interesting that an Edmonton company, when he said that Edmonton's the Philly of the North, I was like, bitch, maybe you're the fucking Edmonton of the South. You ever think of that?
I wanted to say that too. We got our second guest. Sorry, we got our second guest of the day joining us on the pod today. Scott Hastings from OddsShark. OddsShark.com.
What in the hell?
I know, Wanye, you're never here for the betting segment, but you're on the podcast right now. What do you mean?
Cut me off fucking mid-idea when Frank Seravalli's on the show? Shit. Well, hold on. Bring the guy on the show, and then I'll yell at you.
Scott, we had Frank Seravalli on earlier. That's why we were late getting to you.
Beauty. Hopefully I'm not the main event after him. I don't know if I can live up to those shoes.
We were patting ourselves on the back about how amazing it is that we're able to do a podcast with Frank Seravalli because we're a bunch of goofs up in Edmonton who do whatever we want all day long.
And then you bring me on.
I know.
Cool.
I know,
hey, you know Frank Seravalli, right? Like, you know of his work, right?
I do. Very much.
Cool.
So.
Hey, he's legit, right? Legit.
Yeah, absolutely.
This whole podcast has been Wanye bragging about knowing Frank Seravalli. What was that, Chalmers?
But in conclusion to Wanye's thought, and it will be a podcast for another time, but I sat on the phone with him for an hour, and he told me the ins and outs of what's going on in the podcast world, in his business world, and I was grit for an hour. Like, it will be fantastic for the listeners. So let's just cut it off there, and let's get to some betting talk.
Yeah.
We never talked about Super Bowl with me. That's for damn sure.
Well, I got fucking slaughtered in the Super Bowl, but Scott Hastings, I think you did all right, didn't you?
Yeah, I did pretty good. Loaded up on the Bucks. I had Gronk for a touchdown score. I had Antonio Brown for a touchdown score. I had the over with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That was one of my favorite bets. And that under 6.5 receptions for Tyreek Hill. So I pretty much couldn't miss there on Super Bowl, but I was absolute trash through the rest of the NFL playoffs. So, it's the way she goes.
Chalmers, do you have any Super Bowl takes you want to get out with Scott? Any bets you made that weren't good? Any bets you made you liked? Anything you want to get off your chest here before I transition to hockey? Yeah, you got your under.
Well, no, not really. But for, Scott, I went through like the progression that some people go through, and it was the worst case scenario for me. On the podcast on Thursday before the Super Bowl, I predicted T-Bay. Remember, we said 2 potent offenses. It's going to be the under. I nailed it. Over the weekend, I started thinking more, and I talked myself into the exact opposite bet. And I bet on KC, and I bet on the over, and I absolutely got killed, and I couldn't fucking believe it. Like, why did I go through that mental state? What like, I don't know, man. It sucks.
It's almost like fantasy football too. They tell you not to tinker Sunday mornings, and I think you fell into a little bit of that trap that you overthink about it. At some point you were bang on Tampa Bay and the under, and it's one of those things. The more you read, the more you don't know.
That's fair.
I know. I just overthought it, and I couldn't believe it because I'm sitting there after the first quarter, I think it was probably about the first half when I went, "You're the biggest idiot," and you just have all that regret, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's like that thing where you change your bet, but then you change it back because you're like, listen, I'm just going to stick with my first instinct, right? Because then if I'm wrong, it's fine. It was my first instinct is what I believed. But if you change it and you're wrong, then you beat yourself up for changing it. And I just fell into the trap, man. Other than that, the game sucked. I watched it with just my wife and no friends. Whatever. Super Bowl to forget.
That's right. That's lots of fun, though. I also had Tom Brady MVP. Throw that one in there.
Oh, jeez.
Keep adding it up, boys.
Send me an e-transfer if you have a second. Whose dog's going off? Is that Frank?
Did you? So Scott, did you play some of the props? Like, how do you tend to ever put money on, let's say, the coin flip? Which team's going to win the flip? Over under on the anthem or the Gatorade? Do you ever throw money on that, or are those just silly bets for you?
Now, if I'm watching it with my fiance, then, maybe for fun there, but nothing serious. No, I just, it's so arbitrary and just completely out of my control that I just don't feel comfortable. I guess everything is out of my control, but there's not much research. You could say, tails has hit 4 of the last 6, so it's probably going to be heads, but it's an arbitrary coin toss. So I just sort of stick to it. Although Gladys Knight over, that was a lock because she's old and, it might take her a little longer. And 2 people doing the national anthem this past year, like with Eric Church and Jasmine Cyrus or whatever her last name was. 2 people, it's going to take longer. So over 2 minutes was a lock, and it got leaked. So that also was easier.
As soon as they started in with a little gentle guitar at the beginning of the anthem, I was like, oh, this is going way over.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we had one text in from a listener, and I suppose this is kind of along the lines of a rookie betting question, but someone said, if you're someone who wants to get more serious into sports betting and you're looking at something like bankroll management, like for me, that term feels like a colossal term. Like I don't even know how to begin to wrap my head around that. What would your best advice be to someone who, maybe wants to put, like, let's say a couple thousand into an account and start to get serious about sports betting? What would your advice be for like bankroll management?
Yeah, so I think we touched on this early in the football season, and that's the 2 to 5% is what they talk about. So if you're a, quote, aggressive bettor, you're betting about 5% of your bankroll. If you're a conservative bettor, you're betting 2%. And again, it's bet what you're comfortable with. There's no right or wrong reason or right or wrong answer, but typically, when you have a larger bankroll, you're going to feel more comfortable betting on the higher end of that percentage. The inverse. So like if you have $100, 5% of that is $20. You may not want to bet that much because, 5 losses and you're redepositing. So you may feel more comfortable with a $10 bet, right? So it's one of those things that you're just sort of, I guess that would be 5%. So you might be comfortable with a $5 bet. So that would be somewhere in that 2% range. So it's just basically whatever feels comfortable, but typically in that 2 to 5% is where is the comfort range. When you start going 10% of your bankroll, like you got to be pretty damn sharp. And the reality is a professional sports gambler is hitting 55 to 60%. That's reality. Unless you're Tim Donaghy, then you're hitting about 80%. But it's a little different situation.
When you see these guys on fucking Twitter and Instagram who are DMing and following you saying, I am at 92%, that is basically the best way to be like, oh, you're a fucking scam artist then trying to take my money.
That, or they're betting, Alabama is hosting, I don't know, just
whoever.
The Citadel, an FCS team. Northwestern, something like this. 28.5 point favorites, and they bet the money line. Congrats, 90%. Like, and any fool can do that. But a legit better on sides and totals on the spread, -110 either side, 55 to 60% is where you don't become profitable until about 53.5%. But a professional gambler, that's where they sit, 55 to 60%. They'll go on streaks where they might hit. I've gone on weeks where I've hit over 80% in a week, but I've also gone weeks where I go below 30%. That's just the reality of sports betting, is that you're going to have your ups and downs, but you want that consistent average ode of a full season between 55 and 60%. That's where you're a professional sports bettor. Anything over 53%, you're profitable. So don't listen to those jokers.
Scott, I want to ask you, looking at the NHL, some betting on the NHL, you hooked us up with some good advice a little while ago on some shot props, like the Matthews one, if you can get it, Mark Stone, if you can get it. Any other trends you're looking at right now that could potentially make us some money if we get lucky?
Yeah, the Matthews one has cooled off, though. It's been I've not been happy about that, but I'm still going to ride it because I still have faith in it. And same with Connor McDavid. He slowed down a little bit, but he's still putting the shot totals up. The over in the Vegas games, they're on fire right now. And that Western division is so bad that they're the cream of the crop, and they're just lighting teams on fire. So that's one that I really like. And the unders in the Eastern division, I'm trying to remember what they're all called now, the Metro, the East. They've been really strong under teams, and they're very defensively minded, except for Philly. Philly's a little different, but like the Islanders have been a great under bet as well. And you can sort of understand that with Barry Trotz, and they have a fantastic defensive core, not too many threats offensively. So they're a good under team, and Anaheim has been an under team that I've been riding quite a bit. I think their under is about 4-9-1, but they're just, I think Anaheim's one of the worst teams in the league. Like, they're so slow out there. They don't bring a lot that's intimidating, but they play like a strong physical style that slows a game down and is great for the under. So looking for certain teams, I like the Islanders and Anaheim unders, and Vegas overs are the teams that I'm liking right now.
I've been thinking about this for a few weeks, but I want to find a way for us to do a bit of a pick'em challenge here on the podcast, just for some NFL stuff, kind of like what we did for the NFL. I'm hoping to have that figured out by next week. If any listeners have any ideas, let me know. Looking at OddsShark.com right now, some articles up on NHL futures bets and some award winners. The one that I want to start with is NHL Hart Trophy betting. Connor McDavid up to plus 200 on that. Is there value anywhere lower down? Like McKinnon's hurt, so I wouldn't want to bet on McKinnon. And I'm going down like Panarin and the Rangers haven't been a huge story. Like, is Austin Matthews the best play outside of Connor McDavid?
Yeah, bring up Nathan McKinnon. That was my preseason Hart Trophy there. So the injury hurt me a little bit. It's going to be tough to knock off McDavid. The only thing there, and I would never wish for this by any account, but it would be an injury is the only reason that he wouldn't win the Hart this year. He's you guys get to watch him all.
Don't have to tell us.
Absolutely incredible. He's so fast. His end-to-end he had on Toronto there. Was that last Saturday night?
Yeah. Disgusting.
He's like, just somebody trip him or something. Like, just take the penalty. Don't let him go end-to-end like that. So yeah, he's averaging 1.8 points per game. That is just incredible. Could put up over 100 points in a shortened season. If you bet against Connor McDavid, you're just foolish. That said, I think, the value would have to be on Austin Matthews, just in the sense that if Toronto continues to roll through the North Division and they put up a ridiculous season as far as points go and stuff, and he continues his goal scoring style, there's some value there at 9-1, but I'm McDavid or nothing, really.
Makes sense. I'm also looking at the updated odds to win the Stanley Cup. And for those listening, the Oilers are at 28-1 right now. They're right in the same spot, actually, as the Jets, and just a little bit worse odds than the Penguins. But my question to you is going to be this. Is there a team on this list with Stanley Cup potential who's maybe getting overlooked simply because they ran into like COVID problems, or maybe just COVID is overshadowing the division or something like that? Like, I'm looking at Boston at 12-1. I like Boston at 12-1. They're looking like a damn good hockey team. Is there a team on there that jumps off the page and you're going, fuck, they're undervalued right now?
Washington 20-1. Yeah. Washington. Whew. Yeah. Like they've had some issues. Of course, they had 4 or 5 of their Russian players go out there with the COVID. They weren't even, none of them tested positive though, I believe.
No, right? They just broke protocol.
Right. And so did their young goalie there too. So, who still hasn't returned or is close to returning. Sure. So, that's an impact that they've slipped a little bit because of that. But when they're clicking and rolling and everyone is non-COVID protocol, Washington at 20-1, there's no reason that they don't make the playoffs in that division. So then when you've got a 1 in 16 chance and you got 20-1, that tells me a little bit of value. And that East is really, really tricky for me. There's so many, there's like, they're just all so very close that I can understand why they don't want to overvalue any team other than that. Because I could see any of the top 4 advancing on to the conference finals or Stanley Cup finals. But that said, I think Washington is slightly better than the rest. And so at 20-1, they would be my value pick right now.
By the time most people listen to this podcast, it's going to be too late to bet on games tonight. But is there anything you like on tonight's slate in the NHL?
Just for a personal bet here? Is that what this is, fellas?
Oh, yeah. This is 100% me
trying to make down here money.
I lost so much on the Battle of Alberta in the Super Bowl, Scott. I got to get hot here.
Well, I do like your Oilers tonight as an underdog in Montreal. I just think a back-to-back for Montreal, it's a good spot for the Oilers, and likely they'll go back to Jake Allen, not Carey Price. They talked about that last night in the Toronto-Montreal game, that they're going to try and avoid doing back-to-backs with Carey Price. So whether you're afraid or confident of Jake Allen, that's an opportunity for the Oilers. The other tight game that I like is Carolina over Dallas. Carolina's minus 130 here, and they're a team that's really fun to watch. And so those are my two favorite plays today is Carolina as a favorite and Edmonton as a dog.
Beauty,
so
Scott.
Parlay Edmonton and the Hurricanes. Parlay Oilers and Hurricanes.
I think if you were going to go parlay, you throw Winnipeg in there just because they're playing Ottawa, but it's a little juicy at minus 210.
That's always the one that loses.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So I go a little tighter with Carolina, and you're getting Edmonton at about plus 120-ish. So yeah, I definitely like that.
Oh, you want to know a fucking heartbreaking parlay loss? So the book I use has a promo where if once a week you put a $20 parlay on NHL, they'll give you a risk-free $20 bet the next week. So it's kind of just to keep going. So I parlayed the Lightning in regulation, the Golden Knights in regulation, the Sharks in regulation, but I had to get it to plus 600 for the promotion. So I was like, Kate, something super juicy. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, over 2.5 shots. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins had 2 shots. He missed by 1 shot on goal. I missed out on 250 bones, man. I was fucking pissed.
You got a $20 free bet, so let's just hit that one and all's forgotten, right?
Yeah, I guess. Scott, appreciate your time, man. Thanks for it.
Enjoy the game tonight, fellas, and go Oilers.
Yes, sir. All right, there you go. That is Scott Hastings from OddsShark joining us on the Real Life Podcast. From Frank Seravalli to Scott Hastings. That was a fun episode of the Real Life Podcast, and we got some betting advice too. Always. That
was so passive aggressive with the go Oilers. We all know he just wants the Oilers to win tonight, so the Leafs can get a little further ahead in the standings.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't care about no Oilers.
No, Scott does not, but that's okay. We love him for it. All right, I think that's going to wrap it up here. Hopefully we get a fucking Oilers game tonight to watch, eh?
Well, I got a question for you, Kate. One last question. The big untold story from this season is there's a lot of games that have been postponed. Couple to 3 every night. What are they going to do about that?
I think they're going to have to go to. I think they're going to go to points percentage.
Yeah,
I think there's just not. I was looking at the schedule, and there's just not enough time baked into the back of the schedule that I can't see everybody finishing 56 games.
I'm very interested to know, and I think I've talked about this on one of the podcasts before. Where do they draw the line? Like at some point, there's going to be a breaking point where the NHL says, you know what? We can have a team play 12 games in 20 days, but we can't have a team play 13 or 14 in 20 days. Like I'm very curious to know at what point the NHL has to sort of drop the hammer and go, this team will not get 56 in, and we're deciding that now. Like, what if there's 5 games left in the regular season and a team gets shit postponed and they're 1 percentage point ahead of another team? Like, I don't know. It's just, I feel like it's going to be a really, really messy end of the season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be really disappointing.
Can you imagine if the Oilers like missed the playoffs by like 0.10 on a percentage point or something like that? 0.010, like something insane?
As an example, to that point, Tyler, like if the season ended today, the Oilers are in a playoff spot by points, but if you went by points percentage, they would get bumped out to Calgary.
Yeah, they would. And it would be really close too. Calgary's at 0.542. Edmonton's at 0.533. So like literally it's a difference of like 1 game. If the Oilers would have had an OT loss instead of a regulation loss in there, like that's the fucking difference you're telling me. It's ridiculous, man. And I really hope it doesn't come to that. I hope things get cleaned up a little bit, but I will admit it's concerning that we have our first COVID scare in the North Division here. I know the Canucks had one sort of earlier in the year, but like this is really the first time a game in the North has been in danger of being postponed.
Yeah, I was really proud of that fact too. I was thinking, like the North, like let's show them that that it's possible, right? And so this news that you gave us about an hour ago is a little alarming.
Little alarming, but we'll keep tabs on it. As always, here's where I'll plug Oilers Nation. Keep it on OilersNation.com and on our Twitter for all the latest, because we're always sharing that shit. Also, if you want a new hockey podcast to mix into your rotation, the DFO Rundown with Frank Seravalli and Jason Gregor, I'm producing it as well, so you know it's going to sound half decent. Just kidding. But it's out on YouTube and also wherever you get your podcasts from. Basically, it's a nice mix of like 20 minutes of sort of lighthearted chatter. Also, Frank brings it with the sort of the inside scoops, and he's going to be dropping in a few nuggets of information that he maybe won't be throwing out on Twitter or on other areas and platforms. So good inside info, good chatter, and also big guests coming up all the time. I think tomorrow we have Kevin Weeks on the pod, who almost got that Pittsburgh Penguins GM job. So that'll be a fun chat with him. So download the DFO Rundown, visit dailyfaceoff.com. Tell a couple friends about it as well from me. If you like this podcast and if you like me, just do me a solid and listen to the new DFO Rundown. Chalmers, Bag Milk, thanks for giving me an hour today. That was a ton of fun.
That was good. Thanks for having me again.
Before we wrap up, I got to give a little bit more love to our friends at twigandberries.ca. Promo code NATION15 gets you 15% off. Good local company. They make good local products. No judgment, no shaming, no fancy words. It's just real men, and it is just really damn comfy clothes and underwear as well. Their own brand, Nutsack, is fantastic. And shout out to Oodle Noodle as well. Hopefully everyone listening to this enjoyed a hockey game on this Thursday night. If not, enjoy the rest of your weekend, Oilers fans. Episode 255 of the Real Life Podcast is over.
Great job on making it through the entire hour of the Real Life Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from.